We're live, Eric.
Good. Welcome back, I guess, and to a new episode of Content Made Simple. What are we doing today, Ray?
Yeah, good question. I think first of all, we should review what kind of what fell out of last week's episode. Um, we did some follow up stuff, so we should review that, and then we'll get on to actually doing some more stuff this week. How does that sound?
Sure. Sounds good. Um, there was actually, like last week, we managed to get to a place where we could show our first video. And I had uploaded a somewhat short video of myself windsurfing, and we got this going in production. We were live coding in the REPL,
Yeah,
but then you went ahead and uploaded the episode, and
it all went
you
wrong from
said
there.
you said like the famous last words of any developer, right? It works on my machine,
Yeah, well, it did.
but it didn't work in production.
And actually, but
So
it kind of both things were true. Actually, it both worked on my machine and it worked in production, but it would just hit different. Let's say it like that.
yes. So this is sort of somewhat of a validation of this approach of getting stuff into production. And I'm like little segue here. I like to listen to this podcast here called
Oh yeah,
Software
yeah.
Unscripted. It's a podcast by Richard Feldman, who was fairly active in the Elm community. I don't know if he still is.
I think he still is.
Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, he talked on Closure Tray some years ago about why functional programming isn't the norm, I think the talk was.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in this episode, he's talking to this guy, Mike Bryzek, about exactly testing in production. And it is quite interesting because Mike's done a couple of startups, apparently. And differently to us, he spent the first couple of months of at least his last startup getting the deployment pipeline up and running.
Mm, mm.
So rather than just like starting out that we did, we don't have a deployment pipeline yet. We just want to get stuff into production. He spent like 2 months honing
Mm, mm.
this whole software factory, if you will. So I'm sort of in a little bit of disagreement with him there. But then on the other hand, it's like he's very much a proponent of no test environment, no staging environment. Just get the stuff into production and see if it breaks.
Yeah, I think also I don't know what I don't know. I listened to the beginning of that. Funnily enough, I listened to the beginning of that one, and I just thought it was a lot of blah blah blah. So I bailed. But maybe that was bad. But he struck me as someone that was sort of talking around it. He wasn't going to get into the details of language and all this kind of stuff. And I feel like what one of the things that we want to promote on this show, like it or not, is the fact that Clojure does have some special abilities in terms of working with production environments. Um, so actually, I'm at a disadvantage in the sense that I bailed out on that episode. So was I wrong to bail? Did he actually get into some real tech details?
Not so much tech details, but I found that his goal and perhaps ours, but at least my goal, sort of aligns. Like
Right,
you
right.
want to get stuff into production, you want to
Sure,
have
sure, sure.
autonomous teams and all this stuff.
I think everyone wants
Um,
that though. Everyone kind of wants it. Everyone says they want it anyway.
well,
Because
there's definitely people who say we have to go by the test environment and then have the QA people do their thing in the test environment, and then we want to
sure,
sign off
okay,
on that and then promote it into production. I
right, right.
don't I don't see that as a that's not a goal of mine. I want to get
What I
stuff
mean
out in
is,
production.
what I mean is at a sort of like a business level, everybody wants things from idea to reality to be there ASAP.
Yeah.
So I think what you're saying is like sometimes we're sort of in order to be safe, in order to be professional, then we're kind of like, let's say we're shooting ourselves in the foot a little bit or hampering ourselves a little bit. But I think it's like, isn't it like everything where you end up fighting the last war? If you've been burned by having a production failure, then everyone gets into a panic room and says, okay, well, what went wrong? What can we do about it? And what's the answer? The answer is always put a few more checks, put some gateways, put some things in the middle, make sure we don't deploy this live until we've tested it properly. So I think you have to have this mindset of fixing forward, of accepting disasters,
Yeah.
and that's the
Preparing
risk,
for
isn't
disasters.
it? Sorry?
Yeah. Preparing for the disasters as well, which
Yeah,
he also
yeah,
talks about, right?
yeah,
There are going to be bugs in production, then make it easy to figure those out.
yeah,
We in Norway we do a lot of like our welfare system is built on pumping oil out of the North Sea,
yeah, sure.
and we had a lot of accidents in the beginning. But now there's sort of a lot of companies have this zero tolerance for accidents whatsoever, right? So
Mm,
um, oil companies, they have these policies all over the place. So one of them, you're not allowed to drive front first into a parking lot because evidence show or research shows that when people back out from the parking lot, there's more accidents. You're not allowed to walk the stairs without holding the handrail. So, like, you cannot carry something down the stairs with both hands.
mm, mm,
This
mm,
leads to zero accidents, but it also leads to a lot of inefficiencies, right? Because you had this small package that you needed to get down one floor. Well, you can't carry it because
mm, mm,
that's not legal.
mm. Anyway, we're getting off the topic. So
A little bit.
we're 10 minutes in. We better get back to it. So maybe we should talk about the sort of. Basically, I think we agree with the concept of this guy, and we did put our stuff into production, and we've got a domain now, which is nice. But let's talk about what went wrong and why it went wrong, because I think I said that it did work in locally and it did work in production, but it hit different. So how did it hit different? And let's get into that.
Yeah, so the thing was that there was this thing called network
Yeah.
in between.
Yeah.
And locally, the network was really fast. But then when we put the whole of the internet in between, the way that I'll just say it, the way that you encoded the video, made it such that the whole video had to be uploaded to the browser before it could start rendering anything.
I mean, it sounds like I did it, like literally, but it was this tool did it. This I don't want to take personal responsibility. It was some software that did it, not me. But okay, fair enough.
Yeah,
Yeah,
let's just say that a tool did it.
a tool did it. Yeah, okay. I see what you did there. Okay, yeah. What was interesting to me though was that I personally didn't. I thought like the big difference was that your video was, because we put the video on the internet, your video, and your video was, I don't know, 20 megabytes or something, and it played pretty quickly. Now the episode video that was encoded with this tool was something like 1.3 gigabytes, or just over a gigabyte, and I uploaded it, and it took 10 minutes on my network to download and get started, because like you say, the index was at the end, which was really annoying. But what was a shocker to me was I've got this new PC, this like Mac Mini M4 thing, and I mean, it's blazing fast, 1.3 gig. It literally, I mean, I checked the timings. It was like under a second that this came to my browser locally. So, because I was thinking 1.3 gig, it's going to be slow locally. I'm used to kind of SSD speeds even of like 300 megs a second. So you would kind of feel it, but I just didn't even feel it at all. So it felt to me like it was playing immediately locally. It's kind of, it is weird how this time space is getting so much faster locally. Um, so yeah, having it in production was really important. It turns out, um, and when we definitely learned that encoding things properly really matters. Like I personally wasn't aware that you could put an index at the back. Why would anything encode this thing with the index at the back? It was actually mental. Um, but then I ran it through Handbrake, which is a sort of classic FFmpeg front end, essentially. Well, maybe I'm wrong about that, but it doesn't matter. It's an encoder anyway. It's a very kind of like a renowned encoder, and it made it like web optimized, and I guess that put it at the front. And happily enough, it reduced the video size from 1 gig to about 100 meg, so with the same quality. So it goes to show that maybe we need to do something about that.
Yes. So that's I guess that's going to come up in a later episode is like you
Yeah.
can upload whatever kind of video you or not whatever perhaps, but at least a large set of videos and we'll make sure that it's displayable on the internet.
I think the other thing about it that's kind of funny as well is that, like, we think of it as we haven't really talked about this, but obviously everything today is mostly well, everything on his show is extemporaneous. So um, the, uh, the the funny thing about the content was again, it was nothing to do with the code. We were thinking it was something to do with a video player, something to do with a HTML tag, something to do with other bits and pieces, and it was all to do with the actual encoding of the content. So it's kind of funny that, like you say, it's like the fact that it was on production was really the only thing that helped us to figure out what the hell was going on.
Yep.
Because we would never have figured it out locally, I think. We
No.
were looking in all the wrong
Just
places.
and just sort of my way or our way of debugging this was you claimed that it worked on your machine, so we sort of knew that it worked locally with you. I couldn't get it to work over the internet with my setup. So I also SSH'd into the box and curled first at our Jetty server, so at port 80, just to download it and see that it was reasonable, and it was reasonable. I then proceeded to curl on port 80, which is a squid thing, so that we saw that it worked there as well. And then I proceeded to curl on my machine in a terminal just to see that I got it. So basically tracing, yes, we're getting video from like in all the steps. But then it was just the index, which I don't know even what is needed to be on the beginning of the file.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah, it was a really off-piste problem in many ways. It had
Yep.
nothing to do with bugging, debugging, or the code, in fact, at all. It was just to do with the way the content was handled. So lesson learned for us, that well,
Yep.
not lesson learned. We knew that videos are special, but we didn't know that people could screw it up this badly. But now we do.
We do.
So next time around, we'll obviously we'll use this handbrake thing until we get to the point where we ourselves can have this managed on content made simple. So yeah,
Yep.
like you say, future episode, definitely not too far away, I think, because we want to start making life a bit easier for ourselves. The whole idea of content management shouldn't be that we do all the content management outside of our tool in order to make things good for ourselves.
Yep.
Anyway, yeah. So, but we were suffering some pain last week, and we can see it in the. So, should we talk about like what we're going to do today now?
Yeah. So as you said, I was a bit stubborn. I said let's not bring on a new dependency before we have to. So I stubbornly typed out quite a bit of HTML here. And that is not something that we want to be doing. Like working with strings is it's just not fun. And it's really hard to manipulate and process, and all the rest of it.
Mm.
So that's one shortcut we did. The other thing that the observant reader will notice is that we've hard coded, like we can only show one piece of content. And so
We've
there's a
only got
lot of
one piece of
stuff that,
content. I mean, this is. We've got two now, though. Well, this is the second bit of content, so we maybe we
yep,
should just extend the con.
sure, we could like do something like this and you know make our router a bit like we could live with a router like this.
Well, we could. I think this is okay for day
Yep.
two. This is okay. You know,
But it would
but
sort
not
of
the
start to
strings.
be
I'm not the strings, Eric. No.
okay. So let's start with the strings.
Yeah.
So Ray and I, we haven't gone on to this huge spree of researching everything that's out there because there is a solution for this. Weavejester has got this library called Hiccup, and basically it lets you write HTML with closure data structures. And sort of as an aside, um, like that's one of the biggest mistakes, in my opinion, that React did was like they invented this new language called JSX,
GSX. Yeah.
where they could have done this just in even in JavaScript like literals like for arrays and
But
maps
let's leave
and
what they've done to the side. Come on.
yes. Anyways, let's see here. So we want to have this one, right?
Yeah.
Um, I've conveniently SSH'd into our production environment, and I've got this file, the deps.eden. So now uh,
RC4. We're going live dangerously here on the release candidate.
that's what he's proposing, I guess.
Right. Okay.
Um, and then we have
We
to go
trust
here.
James. We trust James.
Yep. And we sync our deps again. And now we should have hiccup available to us.
Mm.
And normally I don't write stuff here in the require thing because that's something that my Emacs takes care of. But this remote editing stuff, I haven't quite figured it out. So hiccup2.core as hiccup.
You like the extra K in there?
No, I don't. Not at all.
Just checking. Yeah.
Yep. Let's see if we can get this evaluated. Do we have a slight hiccup here? Huh. So that's good. Let's see.
Hmm.
Interesting. I don't want to spend time on this, please. What am I missing? Okay, let's just try to write this as a hiccup thing instead of doing it as well, let's have this first video because that's the one we're looking at.
Yeah.
So this is the HTML that we want. Let's stick that here. And then we would do HTML body video. It's early days. SRC would be slash content one.
Do you have some like
And
software coding assistant on there?
oh, let's get rid of Copilot. We were sort of asked to use Copilot at work, and I turned it on, and I generally just turn it off because it's most of the time just annoying. What do we have? We have the no, I'm writing the wrong thing here. We wanted a body and a
A list. Yeah.
UL with a list item with a href, which should have, or sorry, an A with an href, which is show content one, and it
Mm-hmm.
should be first video. And then it says that this should go through hiccup, HTML, and then stir. Does that look okay?
Looks good. Yeah. Let's see if it works on the web page.
Yeah, there is something weird going on here because now, because it is not evaluating properly.
Hmm.
Let me just do a
Did you restart the nREPL shell, by the way?
um no, I did
On
not.
on the server. I mean, because theoretically you should be able to call that. You should be able to call that that function, shouldn't you?
Yep. It hasn't quite been good with it hasn't quite found hiccup. That's interesting.
Mm.
So we did do this. And
We did a sync depth, didn't we?
I did do a sync depth. It does that.
It says nil, so that means it
Yeah.
succeeded.
What's the REPL saying? Are we
This is great content, isn't it? Yes.
It's like when you want to show how great something is, right? And
Oh
it
yeah.
just isn't. So I guess one thing we could do is we could go and go here. And we could actually kill this
We
and then
can kill it.
restart the REPL.
Yeah.
Hey?
Yeah, we can.
Yep.
These things are permitted. You know, it would be very nice if it can all be done without doing this, but Did you make any changes to the REPL.sh, by the way?
No, I don't think I did.
Okay.
So now this one was closed. That's good. And we can go to main and okay, so now I would hope that there was nothing here. This is good
Okay.
because we just stopped. And this is sort of a shortcoming of our approach, right? That and we'll get to that sooner rather than later,
Yeah.
that we don't persist.
We don't persist, and also we don't restart the server automatically.
Yep.
Yeah. Is that what you
So
meant? Or we don't
yes,
persist
we
any
don't
data?
persist our data and we don't restart the server.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And now we're up and running again. First video with hiccup.
Yeah.
So then we can get rid of this. And I guess we can do the same for this one.
Let's hope so.
Um,
I guess you have to put it through the hiccup HTML and string thing again as well.
why would you say that? Because otherwise you get this message, right?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Um, yep.
Sorry to
So
be
we
rude.
go, hey?
Sorry to be rude.
No, but that's fine. I think it's also interesting to show these things, right? Because
Yeah, of course.
um, this is, there we go. So now it's good to go again, and we're in hiccup land.
I mean, you say it's good to go again, but you kind of didn't work. But
Oh, it did.
oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, let's stop this thing. So it did work.
It did. It did. It did. Yeah. Okay.
It could have been
Did
designed better, but still, yes.
all right.
Um, Now we're still sort of at the point where it leaves a little bit to be desired, I would say.
In what respect? What possible respect is is to be decided? We're going brutal, remember? So it's all the look and feel. We're going to leave that for a later day, aren't we?
Yeah, but it is you remember Uncle Bob, right? He's a friend of Clojure, and he
Okay.
has this thing about clean code.
Whatever. Yeah.
And one of the mistakes that I did here was that I forgot to add this thing, like the to hiccup and the string.
Mm-hmm.
And if I were to write another sort of these HTML generating functions, I would most likely forget to stick it through response and like evidently forget
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. So maybe we
So
need
we
to abstract that one away.
we could do something like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we could go like that.
Yep. This is nice. Yeah.
Yeah. And while we're sort of at that, when people ask me what I think, like what's the most important bit about closure for me is nothing of what you really saw, but it is the fact that closure is homo iconic and that we can edit our source code with par edit.
Right.
So I'm not editing this code at character level, but I'm like deleting the whole S expression. I'm not fiddling around with parentheses. I don't end up, unless I copy paste stuff from other places, I don't end up with unbalanced parentheses. So I'm sort of like you could argue that like I'm editing at a too low level because I le edit at the AST, if you will, but that also makes it really handy.
Okay. That point is lost on me a little bit.
Okay.
But okay, fair enough. I'm sure someone
Yep.
else maybe it's in the comments is a light bulb moment for them. But just a quick question for you. I mean, I remember when we were talking about this, you were showing me some other some other code a week or two ago where you wanted to have like a view of the data. Like I thought what you were going to say was that the fact that you're editing data, that we want to see data. So if we're doing tests, we don't necessarily, for instance, want to see like what Hiccup thinks or what the web server is going to consume or output, but we want to see what the data is. So, for instance, it's easier to inspect the Hiccup data than it is to inspect HTML.
Yep. 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 This is I was you solved my problem now in a way. And this is really cool.
Okay.
The thing that I did there is Sean Corfield has this user manager example, and I wasn't quite happy with how that was written, so I wrote one myself, and then I wrote another one just from very sort of basic things. And what I did was when I started out was looking just he has more database stuff in it, so I needed to see that the database stuff worked. And what I did was letting my handler here not return HTML, but rather have it return Eden. And then what I would transport over the wire was just per-stirred Eden, so basically the textual representation of Eden. And then in my tests, I could simply have like I get the response. I know that that is Eden, so I can read Eden read string it,
Mm-hmm.
and then I can look that see that the data is as I expected, and I don't have to think about trying to navigate HTML, which was quite convenient at the time.
Yes, yes, yes. I think that's nice because I mean, at the end of the day, of course, we do want to make sure that it does render into HTML properly, but a lot of that is dependent upon like what the structure of the data looks like in the end.
Yep,
So obviously here we're kind of like hand coding this hiccup, but the whole point about hiccup is that you will be able to use code to generate it.
yep,
You know, and so we've got this like one list here. This is a classic example, isn't it? Some sort of unordered list. Whereas in reality, what we would eventually end up doing is have a nice little for loop around that, so that we
yep,
can produce it on demand, and we don't have to worry about that. But in our tests, we might want to, for example, check that the structure is correct according to our understanding, because we know that the representation between what Hiccup represents and what the HTML will be is pretty one to one in terms of the data structure. So there's no magic with Hiccup in that sense, because HTML is also a kind of set of S expressions. If you squint a bit, it's
yes,
all. I mean, XML. People joked, didn't they, that XML was the web's version of Lisp. Back in the day.
yep.
But yeah.
So
So anyway, to your point that this is a good improvement, and obviously this in itself is, not such a great improvement because we haven't done much with it, but it gives us the potential to do a lot more.
Yeah. The other thing that I've been sort of grappling with over the week is that we see here that we have HTML body, and then so there is some repetition. And I think if you
Mm,
look into the future, there is definitely going to be some like there's going to be some stuff around, and then there's going to be the main content of the thing.
mm, mm.
Right. Right now we just have the body around, but you could imagine that there is a title and some other stuff, some menus and things.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And then the question is then whether you do this sort of in a Reacty top-down approach. So you always call render page with some props, and then you look at the props and you say, oh, right now we're going to show the list, and right now we're going to show the content.
Hmm.
Or if you do it the other way and you say that list content here is responsible for assembling the page itself. I don't know what I prefer there yet.
Um, I think the whole idea of the React model, as far as I'm concerned, is to do with, like, they have component. It's a component-based model, isn't it? And then the
Mm.
idea is that they have this like virtual view, virtual DOM, and then the real DOM. Um, and people claim obviously that, if you're getting live content and you want to change one small bit of HTML, then it's very nice to do that without having a whole screen re-rendering. So I think those kind of things, like this whole single page application without this page re-rendering, is what that's aimed at. Um, but at this moment, we're not doing that, so it's just going to be like on a page level.
Yep.
So I think I'm quite happy to stick with the page level for the moment, and that, we can just move things around a bit. And then when we go into this like more um, spa level thing, if we want to do that eventually, then we can think about components and how we want to do that at that point.
Yep.
Um, if that works for you, because for me, I think we can. It's always a bit complicated. Where do you basically make everything a div, and that's a component is essentially just a div with everything else underneath it. Um,
Yep.
so you have like HTML and body and all that kind of like the outer stuff is essentially always just something that you have on the outside, and everything else is just movable divs.
Yep.
Um,
So, but I think one thing that I would like to get to in this episode, because now we've done one thing, we've just introduced hiccup instead of string HTML things.
yeah,
I would like to have these functions be less of constants and more functions.
sure.
And like it would be nice if this one could take um, some content, right? So we don't have to write a new one for to display the next episode.
Hmm.
And I guess what we see here, the things, and this will help us explore also the data model, right? Because what we probably would need here is let's do like that and like this. Um, it would be really neat if the content type was sort of given to us so we didn't have to deal with that here.
Hmm.
So we could say, and then, right?
Yeah.
And then also um, file name. Would that make sense?
I mean, obviously, it's for content that's on a file system. So
Yeah.
yeah, makes sense. I mean, eventually we'll be looking to get content from other places, but we'll start here. This is good enough. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So if we do that, then now this function doesn't work anymore because it expects more arguments. So right now, actually, as I went ahead and evaluated this, I broke our site.
Yeah, you're the worst. Yeah.
I know. So what we need content type. Mm,
Video MP4.
yep.
Okay, all right,
Uh,
you've got it in the memory. Yeah.
and then we have the file name. That was res resources.
Resources
Oh,
public.
now I've done something really stupid. No, I'm totally lost in my thing. Okay. Um, resources. Do you remember this, Ray?
It's resources public, but then it's a long ass name which I can't remember. So
Okay.
you maybe just have a look on the go to the shell and
Yeah.
have a look, do a list on there. Yeah.
There. And what is it?
You've got your parentheses unbalanced. After all that bullshit, you've got your parentheses
No,
unbalanced.
they were balanced. It was just some other stuff that wasn't balanced.
Oh, ooh, that's a
Right.
getting off on
Um,
a technicality there. Okay.
I am. I wanted to get on off on another sort of technicality, which took me embarrassingly long to understand. And we talked about Clojure being a homo-iconic language,
Yeah.
which also can mean that it's expressed in terms of itself.
Hmm.
And what we're doing here is destructuring. That's sort of the bread and butter. Like we do this all the time. Um, but it took me forever to understand that this thing here is, in fact, a hash map with one of the keys being keys. And the value for that key is this list of the names. And then as is another key in this hash map. And then the value is the name of the thing that we're passing in. So like
Yeah.
I just wanted to share that because when I think of this, it just makes my head explode.
Yeah. I think destructuring is it's becoming a fairly common thing now that I mean I think a lot of languages have it. Um, Ruby has it, JavaScript has it now with ES6, um,
Yep.
and so it's kind of interesting. But what I find that's interesting about it, especially, is that it's a kind of like domain specific language,
Yep.
um, which which has some quirks, and it's just not always obvious exactly what the effect of this domain specific language is, and Clojure, because Clojure isn't specified in any kind of meaningful way, um, you have to mess around and find out as they say politely. You know me, super polite guy. So yeah, I mean, for instance, now you see this as content. It's giving you underline because you're not using it. Um, you can do ORs, and you can all this kind of like the whole DSL around this destructuring is fascinating.
Hmm.
So I've actually written a tool to help understand this a little bit, but maybe I'll put a link to that in the show notes about destructive, which is a little library to convert uh, ways to get things out of a map into a destructured form.
Yep.
But anyway, that's a separate conversation.
Let's do some of the same things to this function because here we hard coded the ID of the thing that we want to show, right?
Yeah.
So we obviously want to have an ID, and it's also content. And this is a thing that I tend to do as a reminder to myself is to use the as, even though I'm not using the thing myself, right? Just to say that this it serves also as documentation when you come back that the thing that you're expecting to get in here is in fact content.
Okay. Although, I mean, for me, I would suggest that this is sort of well, there's two things. Number one, on a kind of like a small aesthetic level, underscore content is better because you don't get the squigglies, and it shows that you're intentionally not using it, but you're using it
Sure.
as documentation. But then the other thing is like the name content is a funny one, because it's
Yes.
very very vague and very
Yep.
generic. So it's interesting that for me, I kind of like that content there is like, is it content coordinates or is it it's like it's nice to have a sort of name for what I think. I mean, obviously naming things is hard, we know that, and sometimes when you say it's like having as something, it's kind of nice not to have an as something because you haven't got to name it, you haven't got to think about what it is. You're just looking at
Yep.
well, this thing has some keys. I don't care what it is actually. It just has some keys that look like this. So
Mhm.
it can actually be anything. So there's sort of two sides to that discussion, isn't there?
Yep.
No,
So
it has to conform to some kind of spec, but actually the spec that you're asking it to conform to is in those keys.
yes. So here I actually did something that I tried to not do is that I found a bad name that seems reasonable,
Okay.
um, which is not good because if I had done like this,
Yeah.
it would have been like this is obviously a bad name. So when you come in here, you will react to this and you would say, "What the fuck is foo?" Whereas um, the content name is not obviously bad, but it's not also like you point out, it's not obviously good. It's like
Hmm.
somewhere, but it's good enough so that you don't react to it.
Okay.
So
How do you feel about that?
right now I feel much better because now I know that it's a bad name, and we have to go ahead and fix it.
Okay.
Um, like this. Now we have a show content which takes a thing which has an ID, and we have a to content that takes a content type and a file name.
Hmm.
And this should now still work, I guess. And it does. And our video is over here somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah. But what I also did now, right, is I'm passing, this is basically the same thing, right? This um, this thing here and this thing here is the same thing.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about it is that we're if you if well, I'm sure you know this, that like one aspect of we're looking at we're like encoding the client and the server in the same namespace. Um, so that's where it's starting to be a bit confusing because you're saying that one part of the stuff is the content served, and the other part of the stuff is the content to render.
Yep. But if we did something like this, mhm, right? So we will define a thing that is our first content, and it should have the keys content type, file name, and an ID.
So I think you've got your maps a bit off there, but okay.
I do, don't I? So um, you were saying?
It's okay. You fixed it. You fixed it. It's good. You still got your names a bit off though, because you've got first video and first content now.
Ah, yeah. Yes.
So, okay, what you're saying is that videos, are you saying that videos have this kind of thing? Is that the idea?
Well, I guess what I'm saying is that this is our first video.
Yeah.
Um, and these things here now know how to um, display them.
Yeah. So video is like a first class citizen because you've got video tags there and you've got file names and all this kind of stuff. So, content at this point is a little bit video specific, let's say.
Yep, yep. Good. What's interesting now is I guess we have this list contents,
Mm,
which is also a little bit hard coded here, right?
it definitely is. Yeah.
And can we sort of say that we expect this to take, well, it has to be fused then, I guess,
Yes.
because these other things are also fuse.
Yeah.
Yep. Um, and it's gonna have to be like more LIs in here.
Yeah. There's going to have to be a for loop of the foos, isn't there? Or
Map.
map. Yeah.
Okay, fuse used bar. This is becoming ridiculous, but
It's
let's
fine. It's fine. Yeah.
this needs to have an ID
Hmm.
and probably also a title, right? Because
And probably some sort of this href shouldn't be hard coded, should it?
I think it should be. That one should be hard-coded.
Wow. Okay.
Because we're just providing a link here. This is a list of links, right?
Okay. I think eventually we'll remove the hard coding, but okay. Yeah. For the
Yeah,
purposes of this exercise. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And then we need to pass this a list of my first video.
Yeah.
And if we go back here, let's do some poink. And it doesn't show anything. And it doesn't show anything because I forgot to add the title here.
Right.
There you go.
Okay. Dokie. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, episode one maybe. So we'll call it episode one because we're
We
going to
can
do an
call it
episode. This is
episode
this is
one.
episode two. You know, we can give it a meaningful name.
Like that?
Yeah. It would be nice to have a description, by the way. But are we
Okay.
leaving that for next week or?
We can leave that for next week. I don't know what I wanted to sort of get to one more place.
Okay.
And now we have like a hard-coded def with our first video, but we understand that we need to have a list of all our videos.
Hmm.
That would be neat. So let's do something like this. Does that sound reasonable?
I mean, it sounds terrible, but okay.
Well, now
I
we
mean,
have a database.
it's kind of like a problem in the sense that this is just an undifferentiated list at the moment. But okay, fine. You know, as databases go, it's not great, but Okay.
And yeah, you're ah yes, you're very correct. Um, I would have wanted to do something more there, but let's just deref the DB here because then that one gets the list
Yeah.
and we should be at the same place.
We can do queries on a database next time. Yeah.
Yeah, yes, we can do that. And then this would be first of DB like this.
Hmm.
Now we have a database.
Right. Yeah. Let's get rid of first video and
Yep.
prove that
And I
it's
think
not being
we
referenced
can
anymore.
almost call it a day
Yeah. Okay. That's
because
good.
we could do what you were suggesting just before we call it a day.
Hmm.
So we leave some work for next time. And this is actually more fun than I was expecting.
So this will be last DB then.
No,
Oh, you're not going to go second. Oh, he's going second. Okay.
there you go.
Right. Actually, interestingly enough, uh, yeah. So how does this work then? Just out of interest. So we have show content first. So how is this working then?
What do you mean?
Oh, okay. List content is just doing the list content, right? Okay. And then um, if we happen to have episode 2, then we'll have that in the
Yes.
list.
So we don't have episode 2 yet, but I'm sort of preempting that we will
Yeah.
add that to
So
our
if we
database.
put like a repeat of episode 1 in that list in the database, then we'll just see episode 1 twice. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And we'll have to do that with a reset now because I've done a def once on this atom. So we can't just redefine the atom. We actually have to start manipulating the database.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe we'll do it offline for episode 2,
Yep.
and then we'll maybe integrate those functions next time.
Yep.
Okay, well, we're coming up for the hour, so I think that's about time to start wrapping up. Um, okay, well, I mean, this has been nice. I think moving away from strings, getting into hiccup has been good. Yeah, I'm quite happy with the progress that we're making here.
Yep.
We've obviously had
We're
a few
still,
hiccups ourselves on this episode.
yep. It's expected. We're also still at like 48 lines. So we 48 lines of proper code and then 56 altogether. Still not a lot. And we're still at a place where we don't have to consider moving stuff into different namespaces or anything, right? We're
Mm.
totally at the point where everything can live in just one file.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible for us to understand what's going on at this point. So that's already good, and it will
Yeah.
be very interesting as this project goes on to see how we organize things so that it like scales mentally more than anything else. I mean, obviously
Yeah.
we're going to be thinking about how to scale in other ways, but our first priority, at least for the moment, is like the scalability of our understanding.
Yep.
So
And I also think like from my point, there's I don't think it's you won't be looking far into the future where you, before seeing that, sticking all this hiccup stuff over in a namespace would be nice because that tend to become verbose. Um, but we'll see that. We'll do that when that time comes.
Definitely, definitely. Okay, so should we call it a day there?
Yep, let's do that.
All right, cool. Right. Well, thank you very much